What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, earlier this week, we sat down, we went through the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, kind of, looked at it from a strengths and weaknesses perspective. And today we're going to do the same thing when looking at the Tampa Bay offense. And listen, the last video, I was very high on the defense. I thought the defense is the number one unit that this team has to worry about. Going into this, I'm not sure how concerned the Lions should be about the offense. Am I crazy to be saying that, Morgan, or is there more to this offense that maybe a lot of fans aren't considering?
No, I understand that, and if you're polling most Lions fans or most just NFL fans in general, they're going to say the Bucs defense is the breadwinner in that relationship, if you will, and for good reason. Like we talked about in the last video, they have studs at every level of that defense. Offensively, it's gotten better. Mayfield is probably playing his best year as a pro, definitely his best passing year as a pro in terms of like statistics and metrics. And they still have really good skill guys in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer's had come on as of late. Cade Otton at tight end has had a better finish to his year than he did at the beginning. So yeah, it's there for them, and they have the potential to. We'll talk about their offensive line in a minute too, but they have the potential to put up points if defenses don't do enough to disrupt them and get Mayfield off that back foot and have him process a little more.
Okay, well, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the first play here then and break down exactly some of the things that you're talking about that Lions fans should at least be aware of when it comes to this Bucs passing offense.
Yeah, Miko, and here the first play, this is kind of what I was pointing out earlier just a minute ago. We were, week 17, they're playing the Saints. They did lose this game 23-13, but it's their first series here, and this is what we don't want to see with Mayfield and Evans. He's hitting the back foot here. You'll watch on this back view of the coach's film, or excuse me, this top view. So he'll hit that back foot and he just rips it. And it's a really nice route against man for Mike Evans. Almost hits him with like a little Euro step at the top of the route. And he makes him fall. I don't know if the turf monster got him or not, but yeah, we don't want this, right, Miko? This is too easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going one-on-one with Mike Evans, even with him being, more of a grizzled veteran at this point in his career, is still a bad matchup because he still has great size and he still has great understanding of leverage. Like you're saying, Baker Mayfield does a good job of hitting his back foot and letting this rip. Mike Evans does a better job of making sure that he wins this route at the top and being able to create that separation so that Baker has an easy target. He doesn't have to worry about trying to fit this into a tight window. He doesn't have to try and throw it too high or back shoulder or anything. Mike Evans has created the necessary separation. The corners already basically touched turf. This is easy pitch and catch right here.
Yeah, Miko, and you'll see it's a clean pocket Mayfield's working from on this rep. And if you're talking about the Bucs offensive line, their tackles are good, right? Wirfs is elite, and then Gadecki's had a better season than he did at guard when he initially was taken. I can't remember where he's out of. Their interior line does struggle a bit. They have Hainsey at center, Stinney at left guard, and then Cody Mock, the rookie at right guard. And it's inconsistent across the board for those guys, both in terms of pass protection and run blocking. But yeah, heating up Mayfield and getting him off, his spot, that would go a long way. And to possibly just disrupting him, forcing turnovers, you name it, that would be really big for the Lions. So speaking of turnovers, we can jump
I was
to
going to
this.
say, I was about to say, speaking of inconsistency of the offensive line, there's some inconsistency with their quarterback because even within this same game, and Morgan, you pointed this out to me, we were kind of going through some of these plays. This is on the exact same drive. So the exact same drive where he makes a really nice throw to Mike Evans to get him open. Then he throws up a real big question mark on trying to understand what he was actually trying to do on this play.
Yeah, and we were talking about it. It just didn't really make sense to Trey Palmer. Maybe you throw this ball to Mike Evans or Godwin or even Cade Otton maybe, but he kind of just throws a YOLO ball, and it's the down and distance. It's 2nd and 7 at the 36. So I don't really see why you put this where you did. And that's kind of the 50-50 with Mayfield. He'll have some really nice passes like he had earlier and that we're going to get into in a little bit here. And then he'll just have these decisions that, he probably comes back to the sideline and Todd Bowles is like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
because
this almost feels like if you're watching a golfer, right? And he just like he chooses the wrong club and the wrong approach to trying to hit this ball because in theory Palmer does have leverage, right? He has outside leverage towards the pylon. But if you're sorry, Baker Mayfield here, you want to throw this more so into the end zone so that your wide receiver can just kind of run underneath it because he has the corner beat. Instead, Baker throws like a pop fly, and now the corner has a chance to make up ground. He's able to now be in position to contest and get the pick.
yeah, excellent point, Miko, and great analogy with golf. I'm not a golfer, but I even understood that one, so that's how you know it worked. But yeah,
I'm
this
glad.
is
I was
probably
gonna say I expect someone in the comment section to be like, "That's not how golf works at all."
well, shoot, then I'm wrong too, then. But I don't know, I'm not a golfer, but yeah, had he put this over on the B of the Buck, then maybe he has a little bit of an opportunity. But even then, uh, Teron Matthews running over there, so I'm not really sure that's a great ball either. So yeah, it pops up a lot on Mayfield's film. Just sometimes they're A plus like throws. He can make all the throws. Make no mistake about it. His arm talent's
hmm
there. Sometimes he will, push the envelope a little bit with his athleticism and try to make throws like off platform where you're like, should we be doing that? So, but again, if he can do that against the Lions and they generate a couple takeaways, then that'll go a long way to the Lions moving on in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we have to keep in mind too when it comes to Baker Mayfield, like you said, he can make all the throws, but sometimes that accuracy is hit or miss, right? He has the arm talent to get his throws where they need to be, but in terms of again being pinpoint accurate all the time, that is also kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to see in this next rep too. Uh, it looks like Mayfield's confused here on this next one, and if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, we were talking about it before we got on. And yeah, the next rep here, it just looks like a misfire, right, Miko? I'm not sure if the receiver ran the wrong route. It is Chris Godwin, or excuse me, that's not Chris Godwin. That's 19. So I don't know if you look like maybe he's supposed to settle down, or perhaps Mayfield just misfires and accidentally puts it on the back shoulder and ends up in a takeaway, right?
Yeah, in normally like typically when you see someone running the wrong route, like the ball is in a completely different area. This ball is still somewhat in the area where you would think it's supposed to be. Yeah, it just doesn't get far enough to the outside to the sideline. So to your point, I don't know if he was expecting this to be more of a curl route, but Baker Mayfield has eyes on him as this route is developing, and he still lets this ball go. So that leads me to believe that the accuracy kind of drops here. He's not able to get it as far out as he needs to get it, far enough out to the sideline. And that's not just a Baker Mayfield issue. Like, we've seen Jared Goff struggle with throws like that at times where it's sometimes not exactly where it needs to be when you're trying to make, a throw from the middle of the field all the way to the outside of the numbers. Those are tough throws.
Yeah, that's a great point, Miko, because he's throwing this from the opposite hash, to your point, to outside of the numbers on the opposite end or opposite side of the field. So yeah, and it hasn't been like this lately. His last 5 games, he's 11 touchdowns, two interceptions, just one fumble lost, but he has been sacked 16 times over the last 5 games. So that's substantial and something we'll have to keep an eye on. Could open the door for Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, whoever to have a big game and get after the quarterback. But yeah, he'll do that. Sometimes it'll be several throws in a row or several series in a row where you're like, okay, he's looking really good, and then he'll just have a couple like that where it's a misfire or a miscommunication with him and the receiver, and a lot of the time it ends up in a takeaway for the other team.
And I think that kind of speaks to a really good point that you're having there, where it's like it seems like pressure is the key to kind of getting him out of the rhythm that he wants to be in. When he has to speed up and he has to again make plays on the fly, not that he can't do it because he's again a little more athletic than probably people give him credit for. But any quarterback doesn't necessarily want to have to make throws on the run or have to go, scramble to find a read. So kind of in this play that we're going to see here, when he's able to be on, like, again, in rhythm, see everything develop, and he's not being overly pressured, he can hit guys very well in stride.
Yeah, and this is another instance like the one that we looked at the top with Mike Evans, just in stride, on time, and again on this one, he's going to hit the back. He's going to hit his back foot. In this instance, Tampa Bay had just picked up a 4th down conversion, And so it's 1st and 10 at the 22. And this is just a post the whole way and a good route by Palmer. And you'll see Mayfield here. This is a good view. He holds the safety with his eyes to the right. So he's going to look. And then at the very end, at the very last second, he's going to flip to the left and he's just going to rip this thing. And it's a good ball, good placement. He does a good job of, they have some bigger receivers in Evans and Godwin. He does a good job with ball placement and a lot of the time putting it in a place where only his receiver can go get it, which you like when you have big receivers to throw to, It's their ball or nobody's. So, yeah, what do you think about this one? It's pretty. I like this ball.
Yeah, it's a really good play, and it's really a good job of Baker Mayfield, again, taking advantage of kind of subpar defense here. Number 31 is late getting onto the field, so he's late to be able to occupy the zone that he's probably responsible for. On top of that, Tyrann Mathieu probably is playing a robber technique, but again, he's not having enough, wherewithal to understand that his man on the outside is beat on the inside, so that corner has no safety help on the inside. So you and I were talking about this. I think when Baker Mayfield gets these types of windows where his wide receivers are able to win and present themselves as a pretty clear target, like he doesn't have to make difficult throws. He can just kind of like, okay, I'm going to throw it at the numbers. I'm going to throw it at your numbers and hopefully you're going to make a play and catch the ball here. And I think this is where the Lions are going to have to go into this game and they're going to have to be very physical with these receivers. They're going to have to make sure that they don't give them easily inside releases and really make Baker Mayfield have to be more creative with throwing the football.
Yeah, I agree. You don't want him just, 1, 2, 3, rip it. 1, 2, 3, progression, rip it. You want to be able to get him off his spot, move him, hit him, rattle him. And he's not the tallest of guys, he's listed at 6'1", 215. So in reality, he's probably like 6 foot, some change. So if they can, you get your hands up. You can't get to the quarterback, get your hands up and clog up those passing lanes. And again, you present yourself with lots of opportunities to potentially get turnovers if you're the Lions defense and make them earn it. Last week there was a couple against the Rams. It was the 2 big plays, right? Just bam, bam. And it was 14 points just like that. I would really like to see no big plays against the Bucs. Make them this is an offense that you should make them earn it, because if the Lions do, in fact, we're going to get into it in a second here against the Jacksonville game, but if you can force them to abandon the run because they haven't ran the ball well at all year, you can do a lot of damage in terms of just confusing him at the line of scrimmage like we saw here against New Orleans.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the Jacksonville tape, right, you go into that Jacksonville game and that was a team that was, again, looked like they had playoff aspirations. Obviously, they were dealing with some, injury concerns with Trevor Lawrence, but they got out and got a pretty big lead against Jacksonville. We talked about some of the things that they were doing defensively, creating turnovers and really getting after them on the defensive end. But on the offensive end, they were converting just as easily. And a lot of that starts to go, again, back to Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans, right?
Yep, and that's what they rode this. They beat the Jags. This is the Week 16 game. The game we just looked at for New Orleans was Week 17, the one they lost 23-13. But they won this one against Jacksonville 30-12. They ran them. And this is just another top shelf throw, right? We just talked about it a minute ago. This is where Mayfield's good at, placement, right? Ball placement. He's going to put it right on the top shelf and make sure, it's his guys or nobody's. And again here, watch him hold that safety for just a second so that window opens up. And a good play by Mike Evans, man. Had a heck of a year. You can kind of argue whether or not he should have been a first-team All-Pro again. But the statistics speak for themselves. I believe he has 13 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think to your point, right, there can definitely be some argument that maybe he shouldn't have been, an All-Pro or shouldn't have been a Pro Bowler over like Amon-Ra. But when you start speaking about longevity, Mike Evans has done it at a long time. And one thing that I do want to point out here in this play as well, and I got to give a lot of credit to Dan Orlovsky for pointing this out over on ESPN, is how Tampa Bay manipulates space. So we've talked about this a few times already about how, these wide receivers are able to get inside leverage and then basically Baker has an easy target. You combine that with what you're saying here, right, where there's a huge space between where the corner is on the backside of Mike Evans and where that safety is. That's a wide open window where, again, Baker just has to make an accurate throw. He has to be on time with it, and he doesn't waste any time doing that. The pressure from the defense isn't in his face, so he's able to, again, hit that window as soon as it opens. And this is something that could be concerning for the Lions. But I will say this. I would say that the Lions safeties are a little more athletic than number 5 looks here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that Aaron Glenn limits the amount of reps where you have one-on-one with Mike Evans with no help. I will say in week 6 against the Bucs, when the Lions beat them in Tampa Bay, Cam Sutton did have probably one of his best games of the season against Mike Evans and company. But still, to your point, Miko, I would like them to limit the amount of times that you have, Cam or Kendall Vildor or anyone one-on-one with Mike Evans, because he is such a big body. To your point, he's been doing it for so long, going to be a Hall of Famer. So yeah, try to limit that. And, I know it's a lot because they have weapons. Palmer's coming on really strong. Chris Godwin's still a really good player, had 1,000 yards, only had 2 touchdowns. But I'm right there with you. Take Mike Evans away, and see if somebody else can make hay.
Yeah. And again, this is no shot at Mike Evans whatsoever, but like you said, Cam Sutton had a really good game against him, and I think Cam plays a little bit better when he doesn't have to deal with shifty wide receivers. Obviously, Mike Evans as a technician, as a veteran, can create space without having to be super shifty, but I just don't think it's going to be as quick and as sudden as he's had to deal with with the likes of Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua. Like, those are younger thoroughbreds that just have that giddy up and whenever they're trying to basically get out of their route. So a little bit less of that with Mike Evans.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I completely agree on the point too. I was going to say that in a little bit, that Cam is better suited at dealing with like some of the bigger, more physical receivers than he is like the Tyreek Evans and the DJ Moores of the world that are just, so quick and so shifty in space. I'm right there with you.
And then the other thing that we're going to get to in the next play, Morgan. So obviously, like, we've talked about the different ways that the Lions defense can kind of get after Baker and make life difficult for him. We've talked about obviously applying pressure. We've talked about being physical on routes and not giving them inside leverage and things of that nature. Another thing that Aaron Glenn can do specifically is just try to confuse Baker at the line and make him think that he's seeing one thing when in actuality something else entirely is happening on the defensive end. And that was something that Jacksonville did really well on this play here.
Yeah, for most of the game they didn't, but here I will say this was a nice little sneaky switch here by Jacksonville. So what you're going to want to watch is the top of the screen. It's going to go in motion. Nobody travels with them. So Mayfield is probably thinking, okay, the Jags are in zone. But if you watch as the tight end comes across the formation, Josh Allen, the defensive end for Jacksonville, is actually going to travel. I don't know if that's Britain or not. I want to say it is. 27's got a beat on this, 37's got a beat on this the whole time. Just watching Mayfield's eyes, it's a little outbreaking route by Trey Palmer. And if 37 caught this is probably 6 the other way, right, Miko?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're saying, this is how you disguise coverage because, again, typically when, secondary players are playing man, they're a little bit closer on the line because you're trying to challenge so that, again, in a situation like this where Jacksonville is showing a blitz, you're trying to jam and disrupt receivers off the line so that your, pass rush has an extra second to get there. Jacksonville does the opposite. They give some cushion. They give that illusion that, like, hey, maybe this is a zone blitz. So not all of these guys that are at the line are clearly going to blitz. And Jacksonville blitzes just about everybody except for 33 who drops in coverage. But then everybody else on the back end is manned up. And except for the safety who's basically playing center field. So again, if Aaron Glenn can do this type of manipulation with the likes of a CJ GJ, a Brian Branch, and a Fatu Melifonwu or Kirby Joseph, like, there's a lot of advantages that you'll be able to take on, again, Baker maybe predetermining some throws. And those guys that I named have all had an interception on the season, and I could see them come away with another 1 or 2 in this game.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, Miko. And we talked last week how there's not really going to be much you can do to fool a guy like Matthew Stafford, right? Like, he's seen it all. He's, been in the league. I think this is his 15th year. All right. So Mayfield's been in the league for a little bit, but this is one of the reasons why he's bounced around a little from team to team, is just his inability to process some of this stuff. It's not like he doesn't get it. He's obviously made it to the NFL. He's the number 1 overall pick at one point, so he's got the talent. But yeah, to your point, you're going to be able to have opportunities where you can maybe confuse him pre-snap, and then it results in opportunity for your defense. So yeah, this is definitely something to watch for. They can get a little bit more creative with their blitz packages. He's not the most mobile guy, so you don't really have to worry about him, breaking off and running on you. I mean, he can run for a first down, but yeah, the possibilities are definitely more open this week than when you're playing either a veteran like Matthew Stafford or somebody who is a little bit more mobile.
No, for sure. And we kind of keep going back to it because I do think this has to be the theme. And it really is kind of supported by what you were saying earlier about, again, 16 sacks in the last 5 games. You start putting more pressure on him, you start putting more hits on him, then the ability to process what is happening, or when you start showing blitz like looks of, or you start showing blitz, there's always going to be that thought of, okay, well, are they actually blitzing this time? Where is the blitz coming from? And the more you give him to think about, the easier it becomes to defend that passing game, because then some of the plays we looked at earlier, maybe some throws are off on accuracy. Some of these he's predetermining. And again, that can all be confounded as well by the fact that this team doesn't run the ball well, Morgan. So there's always going to feel like there's going to be some extra pressure on Baker Mayfield to get, this offense going, simply because Tampa struggles, with their rushing attack.
Yeah. And, I know the Lions have had they've given up some big third downs here lately against, dating back to Minnesota and then against the Rams. But to their credit, that some of those throws Stafford hit on third down were stupid, like insane throws. The one he got blasted. I'm like, what are we doing here? So yeah, you see this all the time. I watched 3 full games of Tampa to just get a feel for their offense on the coach's tape, and you see this constantly. So this just looks like a missed double team. The defensive tackle, 95 for Jacksonville, just runs across the center, Hainsey's face, number 70. You'll see it here circled in red. And you see this, right? And then they do have a lot of plays that go for negative yardage in terms of trying to run the ball. So, and this is what the Lions want. Their personnel, it is what it is right now, right? They're not a lockdown secondary. They showed they were bend, don't break last week. They made enough plays to beat a really good team at home in the Rams. But if they can get Mayfield and this offense to a lot of third and longs by shutting down the run, and they're abandoning it, then the defense is going to have better odds at getting off the field, right? It just makes sense because you're going to be able to get Mayfield in third and longs, send some of those blitz packages we just looked at that Jacksonville used a second ago. And you open up the possibilities, because you don't want them to, they haven't ran the ball on anybody, right? So you want to continue that. You want to continue that streak and just make them as one-dimensional as possible, right?
No, 100%. And that's something that seems to have been the philosophy of Aaron Glenn and this defense probably since they came out of the bye, where they're just kind of like, listen, we're going to have to deal with the fact that one of these wide receivers is going to burn us, and it might be Mike Evans, right? There's a really strong possibility it could be him, or it could be Godwin, but they're going to basically say, you have one guy. We're going to give you one guy, that's one receiver, and everything else is dead. And that starts with shutting down the run game. They've done that really well. Obviously, you've always said this every time we've done these videos, any given Sunday, something can happen. But one thing that has been very consistent of this team pretty much all season, except for a handful of games here and there, is that they've been able to limit, opposing teams' rushing attacks.
Yeah, and that has to continue. I'm really, that's like my main point. And they haven't been good at running the ball. It's just a combination of the backs not hitting where they need to, in terms like Rachaad White. He's not bad. It's just not cohesive right now. The interior offensive line has issues. Although, yeah, I will say on the games I watch, they're better at run blocking than they are pass blocking, and they're not good at run blocking. So something to watch for with Aleem McNeil. I know we talked about that. But yeah, man, it's just, they really make it. I want it to be as minimal as possible. Like they lose a couple, like the first 5 runs, they 3 of them go for negative yardage. And if they abandon it, then man, the Lions could be in a really good spot, right? Just to get ahead and stay ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about, like you just mentioned Aleem, right? Aleem, according to PFF, is like the highest graded defensive tackle so far in the playoffs. And he was having a strong year before he got hurt. So the fact that he's kind of picking up where he left off, we know about, Aiden and his pressure numbers. and we talked about this even so much so with the Rams game, it doesn't always have to necessarily result in a sack, but if you can just consistently start applying pressure to Baker Mayfield, then again, maybe this passing game just gets out of sync. Oh, and let's not forget big breaking news yesterday. James Houston is coming back, so at least maybe be able to get in there on some of these 3rd and long situations. So now maybe you have a better pass rushing plan to be able to get to the quarterback or get offenses off the field so that they're not converting 3rd and 13s or longer, and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it helps too that the Lions have seen this skill group earlier in the season. Like they have a feel, like they played Mike Evans. Mike Evans is an all-pro for a reason. Chris Godwin's been a really good player in this league for a long time for a reason. But at the end of the day, stop the run, get after Mayfield, do it with only 4 or 5 if you can. That'd be really nice. Like if we get some clean wins, especially from the interior, man, if Aleem could have a big day.
And there's a lot to talk about too. Like, again, if you're a Tampa Bay Bucs fan and you're sitting here like, no, like you guys are underestimating your offense, it's possible, right? Because you guys are clicking, but there's something to very much keep in mind. When we played you guys earlier in the season, we were actually missing pieces from this defense. Brian Branch wasn't healthy. CJ wasn't healthy. Ifeatu Melifonwu wasn't getting playing time. And Kenneth Vildor, whether you love him or hate him, is at least physical with the, in coverage and is at least very competitive. We talked about some of the plays that he gave up. It's not because he was cleanly beat. It's just sometimes they're pinpoint passes. And I don't know if Baker Mayfield can do that for 4 quarters. Maybe that's the best way of saying that. Could he put together a drive or two? Absolutely. But I think if we're talking about the span of a 4-quarter game, I think at some point in time, this defense is going to start to weigh and wear down that offense to the point where they might start making a couple mistakes and just have trouble converting.
Yeah, and like Bucs fans, like we just put a bunch of respect on your skill guys. Like there's not many groups of skill players that I would take above Tampa Bay's. Like their receivers are great. But we're just looking at it like we've been playing these teams with gods at receivers, man, and they've been going the hell off. Okay.
Yeah.
Lions against CeeDee Lamb. Lions won that game / lost that game. I'm not going to get into it. He went off. Justin Jefferson, both times we beat the Vikings, went the hell off. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Osborne had a day. I don't know if you watched last week, Puka Nacua went off. So there's a formula to this. It's the way the Lions, if you're new to our channel, it's the way the Lions defense is currently constructed right now due to injuries. And yeah, it's just what we're saying is you'll see like we said this to Rams fans last week, the Lions offense is like that. Okay. Like, yeah, barring shooting themselves in their own foot, they're going to pound it. They can throw it. It's one of the most efficient offenses in the league for a reason. So yeah, that's just where this mindset comes from with us. Like we know that Mike Evans is probably going to have a day if we're betting men. But that's kind of how the coaching staff probably views it as well. Like they're going to try, but at the end of the day, it's an all-pro. So what you going to do?
Absolutely. So with that said, guys, let us hear from you all in the comment section below. What do you guys think about, the Lions going up against Baker Mayfield and this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense? Are you confident? Are you concerned? Do you think Morgan and I are probably underestimating, the run that the Bucs offense is currently on? Also, if you're a Bucs fan, again, let us know. Give us some more insight into your offense. So maybe there's some things that we didn't get to pick up on film that you guys do really well that you think that you have an advantage in. Also, you can always head over to prideofdetroit.com. Check out all the latest articles and news that's breaking over there. And last but not least, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified anytime we upload new videos or any type of, going live or something like that over on YouTube. So with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. We'll catch you guys in the next one.